Saquon Barkley and Kenny Golladay out as they face the Chiefs on Monday night. Eagles running back Miles Sanders was put on IR to miss 3 weeks. It's not a big deal. They don't really run the ball a lot, but he is a very good player and you want him on the field, but now he is not going to be able to play for 3 weeks. Now, I always like coaches' answers, but I like Mike Tomlin so much because he's just a guy that if you say something and it's completely off basis, he can go after you, and it's great. Media asked Tomlin about the UFC job. The UFC Trojans fired their head coach earlier in the year, 2 weeks into their season, and Tomlin was asked it. And Tomlin said, "Never say never, but never. I have one of the greatest jobs in the world. The Steelers have only had 3 coaches since 1969. That's a fact. They had Chuck Noll for like 20 years, Bill Cowher for like 15 years. Then they have Mike Tomlin. This is his 16th year. And also Mike Tomlin's never had a losing record." Mike Tomlin also said, "You don't ask Andy Reid and Sean Payton these questions. Where I've won as many Super Bowls, I've been to more Super Bowls than Sean Payton, and I have a better record in Super Bowls than Andy Reid does." He also went and said, "Whoever's asking these questions is a booster with not a big enough paycheck," which is great. And like, the funniest thing was before he said that segment, they were like, "And anyone else has a question? No one has a question? Okay, Tomlin." And then Tomlin's like, "But I gotta keep going." He kept going and then walked right out, and that was. And like, why even bother them? They won. Even yesterday, won 3 games in a row. This team is energized. They're playing well. They're winning games. They just win the games that you can win. That's all you can do. So, we said this, and I referenced in a video before, just how serious was the J.J. Watt injury. Well, it turned out to be extremely serious. He's done for the year. But what is the severity of the injury? Well, he tore his labrum, which is the part up here that controls pretty much your shoulder's movement. He tore his bicep. He dislocated his shoulder and also tore his rotator cuff. So he's basically moving. He has no control here. His rotator cuff, his bicep, and dislocation in his shoulder. And he played through it. That's terrifying. He played through essentially 4 different injuries on the same arm, roughly in the same area. He tore it here. He tore his labrum. He tore his rotator cuff. He tore his bicep, and then he ended up having a dislocation on top of that. That's like 4 different injuries, and that's 4 different surgeries, or 4 different procedures technically you have to have. That's amazing that he was able to play through it. Saints kicker Will Lutz suffered a setback in his injury. He's done for the year, which is very disappointing. He's one of the best kickers in the league. The Saints do have some kicking issues. The kicker that they have, Johnson, he only played this past week. He played in his 2nd game ever. It's just the way it goes. That sometimes there's injuries, and you just gotta get the best people that you can. Maybe there's not a great one, but there's an okay one. You gotta take that. Coach Kyle Shanahan told reporters that Javon Kinlaw had season-ending surgery. Quote by Shanahan, "They think they solved the problem. Now, that's obviously not very good news that you lose a guy for the year. But if you can get him healthy and he's able to stay healthy, that's what you want. Speaking of a guy who's not healthy, isn't actually going to be out for the remainder of the year, Robert Tonyan. Tonyan tore his ACL. He caught that was crossing the field. He caught a ball when he was crossing the field, tried to make a move, and he landed a little awkwardly, but he kept going, and he looked fine. And then he kind of just went in for the tackle, and he just kind of went down with it. And he was holding onto his knee. They're going to miss him, but again, this is a Packers team that ended up, in this game, had like 5 tight ends on their roster. So it's not the end of the world, but he is a big part of their offense. So they are going to miss him. When we talked about Matt Nagy during the COVID protocols, he did not coach against the 49ers. Is that the reason why they lost? No. I just don't think the Bears right now are not very good. I think they got a bright future, but they got to figure out this offense. And is Matt Nagy the head coach after this year?